Hi friends, I'm Jack Watson, UI UX designer, illustrator, animator, donut connoisseur. We're going to be working on another Halloween illustration challenge together. We're going to be illustrating some classic Halloween creatures or monsters, and we're going to be doing it in a fun, sort of framed Victorian portrait style. If you've ever seen those creepy Victorian portraits before. I hope everybody in the chat gets the reference. There are links in the description below this video. You're going to want to go ahead and grab your starter file. There's also links to our Discord communities as well as our other challenges. So let's get over there. Once you download your starter file, you're going to want to open it up in Illustrator, and you're going to see a ton of stuff in this file. I've just got some notes over here about what we're going to be covering on this stream. So just some reminders about what we're going to be talking about, a list of the tools we're going to be using. I've also got some resources for you today. If you're not familiar with classic Halloween creatures, I've got some resources if you want to read about. I've got a couple of links for you to get some references for today. And then over here, I've got some frames started. You can feel free to use these if you want to. You don't have to, but to focus our attention on creating our portrait, figured I would give you some options to choose from. Everything from like very Art Deco to very ornate, a classic circle as well. The other thing I want to talk about before we get going is that this is going to be, we're going to create a monochromatic illustration today. You don't have to, it's really up to you, but I'm going to show you how we can go about really easily creating some shading using the tint slider in our color panel up here. So if I open up the color panel, you'll see normally it kind of looks like this with hue, saturation, and brightness sliders. But if I'm using a global swatch, it's going to change to something that you can adjust the tint, like how much of that color is applied. So if you have never worked with these before, I'm actually going to show you how to set one up. So we're going to go back to our default fill and stroke over here. And I'm going to click to bring my stroke to the foreground. I'm going to just remove the stroke. We're not going to need that for now. You can do that either from the swatches panel or from down below the swatch and fill kind of icon on the side. I'm going to bring my fill to the front, and to get started in the color picker, if you drag up and down, that's going to change the value, lighter and darker. If you drag left to right, that's going to increase the saturation. For today, we need something that's going to be fairly rich, both in saturation and in value, so that we can have a lot of range in our tint slider. If you go too light, you're not going to have as many values to kind of play with. So try to go with something a little bit richer. And then once you've got your color picked out, you hit OK. To add this as a global swatch, you're just going to click on this little plus down here. And the most important part is make sure that you've got global checked on. You're going to want to make sure it's a process color, not a spot color. Spot colors are specialty inks for print. We're not working with print today. So we're just going to make sure we check on global swatch under process color and hit OK. So now we've added our red swatch if we wanted to work with that. You can also change the colors of these frames if you want to. If I use the direct selection tool to click on the fill here, I can very easily change it to whatever swatch I want. If I change my color to be red, I can apply it, and it's already going to keep the tint that I used on the previous swatch. So if you're working with swatches, it's a really great way to kind of switch up your colors very easily. I'm going to be working with purple. It's really up to you, like I said, if you want to use a different color. So to get started, all three of these frames are approximately the same size, so it's really not going to make too much of a difference which one you start with. But to give myself kind of a guide, I'm going to make sure under my shape tools, I'm going to switch to the rectangle tool. If you don't see the rectangle tool, you've got something else selected, just click and hold down on your tools panel over here on the shape tools, whichever one you've got active. You can switch to the rectangle. And I'm just going to draw myself out a little guide here. I've got smart guides on, which you can enable under view. That's how I'm getting these little pink lines that are helping me line things up. It doesn't need to be exact. I'm just going to use this, like I said, as a guide. So I'm drawing out a rectangle approximately the shape of my frame, and I'm going to move it onto my artboard, and I'm going to create my character kind of over top of this. So I'm going to switch it to a fill and a stroke because I'm just using this, like I said, as a guide. And now we can start to kind of block in our characters. So I like to kind of block in characters large to small. I'll either start with the pen tool if it's something that's going to be more organic, or even I oftentimes, as you all know, start with simple shapes to get the proportions. You can do the same thing if you were creating a character or a landscape or any kind of composition, right? You just kind of want to get a general idea of the proportions and the placement of items. So if we imagine this is going to be our frame, I'm just going to drag out a rectangle here. And this is going to be like the head of my character. So starting large to small, I'm going to switch the fill and stroke so that I'm again working with the fill color here. I'm going to bring in my tint slider. If I drag it to the left, it's going to bring my tint lighter. I'm going to have less of that color. If I bring it all the way to the right, it's going to make it darker and I'm going to have more of that color. So I'm going to leave it dark for now. Maybe we'll adjust these as we kind of go along here. So there's kind of going to be the mass of my character's head here. You know, I can scale this down using the selection tools here if I want to, as I see fit. It doesn't need to be a perfect square for today, unless you want your character to have a perfect square head, or a perfect circle. So we're going to go over here, and we're now going to switch to a different tool. I'm going to switch to the polygon tool. And this is going to seem like kind of a crazy process, but it'll all come together kind of in the end here. So with my polygon tool, the cool thing about this is when I start to drag out a shape, you can see right now I've got a triangle. And if I go over here, that's not a polygon, you're probably thinking to yourself. But if you go over here and use the arrow keys on your keyboard, you can increase or decrease the number of sides. So I can pull this up to have as many points as I want to. But if I go down and I set it to have 5 points, and I'm doing this, by the way, all with my mouse held down. I'm holding down on my mouse. I'm not letting up at all. So if I let up and I release, it's going to keep that shape. So I don't want to do that. Hold down your mouse when you're using the arrow keys. And with the mouse still held down, I'm going to switch to holding shift, which is going to keep my shape kind of constrained and upright. All right, so we've got our shape there, and you're like, this doesn't look like anything, but that's okay. We're going to rotate this around, so when I hover over the corners of my shapes, I can start to rotate my shape, but it's going to be a little bit hard, even with smart guides, to maybe get this to be perfectly rotated. So if you hold down shift, you can rotate your object in 45-degree increments, so I can flip it around and have it be perfectly kind of aligned. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this up, and I want you to kind of look at something here. Maybe look like a little bit, use your imagination a little bit, abstract this shape to kind of understand why I've picked a polygon. I've picked one with 5 sides. And if you take a look at this, you imagine it's a character, we've got the shoulders up here, the left and the right side, and then as we go down, if you imagine that we've got the hips down here to kind of form the torso. This is where the arm or the legs would connect, and our arms would be kind of up here. So you can use these simple shapes to kind of block in the proportions of your character. And I'm actually intentionally, I should say, having the shapes run off the bottom here. Remember, this is a guide, and we want everything inside of this guide to be visible in the frame. And so if I have this weird area here where there's gaps, there's going to be gaps inside of my frame. So I want to really make sure that I drag this off of my artboard, just kind of adjusting with the scale tool using the, the scale option using the selection tool here. So we can make some modifications to this. Always making sure that I've kind of got it going off the frame, because in a portrait, you're going to have that character kind of go off the frame with the focus being on the head up here. So now we've got a pretty good indication of what our character is going to be structured like. I'm going to go and start to apply some tints to this. So up here, I can bring this down to kind of lighten my character if I want to, and I'm going to start to build out, working large to small. I'm going to start to build out the face a little bit. So I'm going to drag another shape out here, another rectangle, because I want my character to have kind of a 3/4 view of their face. And I can make this a little bit larger. I'm kind of having that second rectangle come halfway down the face, so kind of start from the midline of the face down. And with that, it still looks a little bit weird, maybe like a Minecraft character. With my selection tool here, I can grab these corners, which are the live corner tool, and when I drag them in, it's going to round out my corners. So that's going to make it look a lot more like my character's kind of face here. I'm going to select both of these rectangles, and I'm going to round the corners out on both of them. And then if I need to, I can scale this in a little bit to just kind of get the kind of look. It's really dependent on the look you want to get for your character. Sorry about that. I've been talking a lot today, so apologies. Okay, so we've got our base shape here. Let's start to add some indications of the torso. indications of the torso. We're gonna start to add some shapes to define the torso, I should say. So this time I'm gonna switch over again to my polygon tool, and I'm gonna drag out another shape. I'm gonna use the arrow key to get another triangle, and I'm gonna hold Shift to constrain it. Again, I want to keep that kind of like perfectly 90-degree position of my triangle. And I'm going to use this shape to break up my torso. So I'm going to drag it over here. Maybe you can start to see. I asked the chat what their favorite monster was. The only response I think I got so far was ghost. So you could definitely use simple shapes to make a ghost. But I'm going to use this triangle here to kind of start to divide up my torso. So maybe this is going to divide up sort of the arms of my character, kind of using this shape here. And I can adjust this, again, using the tint slider over here if I wanted to make this a little bit darker. You know, maybe you can kind of see where we're going with this. I'm also going to drag out a couple more triangles here. We're going to drag out one over here. And these are going to be a little bit less, the preciseness of these is a little bit less important. I'm going to eyedropper to grab the color of my face. And then we're going to rotate these around, and we're going to place these on either side of the character here. We'll do the same thing over here. I'll drag out another triangle, rotate it around. I'm really not being super precise this time, you know, with the rotation, the angle, and the scale of these, because faces aren't symmetrical. And also, with a very minimal character like this, the character, the personality comes through in the exaggeration of the shapes. So I think it's kind of fun to have a little bit of asymmetry, especially with a 3/4 view of the face. This ear would be a little bit shorter because it would be a little bit hidden by the side of the face there. And also, it just, like I said, it gives a little bit of personality. Drag out a couple more here. I'm going to eyedropper this color using the eyedropper tool, and we'll just kind of get these into place here. Another trick, if you don't want to spend a lot of time dragging out a bunch of triangles, like let's say you're like, I really just like this particular shape. I can go up here. Let me get this sorted first. I go to Object, I can go to Transform, and I can go to Reflect. And if I just hit OK, it's just gonna reflect that first object. So for this, you're gonna want to make sure you hit Copy. And if I choose vertical, you see in the Reflect panel, it gives you kind of like a preview of how it's going to flip. So if I were to pick horizontal, it's going to flip it along that horizontal axis versus vertical. And when I hit copy, it's going to give me a copy that's perfectly flipped. So we can kind of drag it out there. There we go. Again, I'm not going to be super precise because it's kind of just meant to be a little bit silly. We can make these a little bit, you know, not quite the same, slightly different. So that's going to be the base of my character. Let's kind of connect everything together. I'll drag out a circle here so we can put like connect the head to the body. That's important. Although I guess if you were making a ghost, you definitely want to have the head kind of floating. Don't select your box there. Drag to select just the face here. I'm going to bring them down. I'm really just using simple shapes and the selection tool to do a majority of this work. So now that I brought this down, you can see I've encountered a little bit of an issue. I created these objects not in any kind of precise order in terms of the stacking order of the layer. So I need to go to Object, and I need to go to Arrange, and I need to go to Bring to Front to make sure that my my face comes in front of the outfit there. And at this point, I like to zoom out and see like what the proportions look like. This is a little bit large for my taste, so I'm going to pull the size of this down a little bit. I'll move this up a little bit. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to select the whole thing, drag to select everything, and then holding down Shift allows you to select or deselect. So I'll deselect the my background there, and we'll scale this guy up to fill a little bit more of the frame. Okay, so let's start to add the final details kind of to the face here, give this guy a little bit of life. I'm going to switch to the ellipse tool again. And I'm going to draw out some eyes, grabbing the darker color, using the eyedropper tool. Now this time, in order to keep everything kind of aligned, I'm going to drag out my shape by holding down Alt or Option, and that lets me drag out a copy. And with Smart Guides, I can make sure that the eyes stay kind of in line with each other. Peter saying it's kind of like a pig vampire with a big tie. Well, let your imagination run wild. We could scale this down a little bit. It's a little bit large there, the side of the face, to kind of help out, maybe. Okay. And then with our eyes, I'm gonna stick with just the ellipse tool for now, and I'm gonna drag out another circle, this time constraining it to a perfect circle by holding Shift. And I'll adjust my tint slider again. I want something that's kind of a little bit darker than the face, but not as dark as my eye. So I want it to have good contrast, but just a little bit. This is basically a highlight on the cheeks. And I'm gonna use Option to drag out a copy. Do you think I need to move the eyes up a little bit? Just kind of moving things around and getting them in place as I see kind of fit here. There's really no formula to this. It's going to be dependent on the story that you're trying to tell with your character. So we got eyes, we've got cheeks. Let's make sure that we add a mouth. So I think we all know who this character is, or what this character is. This is now a vampire. So I'm going to switch to my line tool. I'm going to keep the mouth relatively simple because I want the focus to be on the teeth, right? That's kind of an identifiable feature of a vampire. So with the line tool, keeping it simple, I can just drag out, holding down Shift, a line here. I'm going to make sure to click on my stroke to bring it to the front, and I want to make it dark. So I'm going to set it in my kind of dark purple. I can increase in the control bar up here. I can just use the arrow keys to nudge it up until I'm satisfied with the line weight. And once I am, I can go ahead and add my teeth. Notice I'm zooming in and out a lot because I want to get an idea, is the silhouette of the character reading? Is everything, looking good, or have I made the facial expression look weird? Which happens sometimes. The placement of eyes and stuff is really important when it comes to creating characters. A lot of times, really cute characters will have these kind of wide set eyes that are set lower on the face, so the mouth and the nose and the eyes will be all very close together. So a little tip for you. So now we've got another triangle drawn out here. I'm going to switch the fill and stroke. And I'm just going to, again, rotate this around, holding down Shift, so that I can put my little vampire teeth in place. I'm going to make them a little bit longer and a little bit narrower, and then holding down Alt or Option to drag another copy out here. All right, there we go. I think this is pretty good for now. I want to make sure we have enough time to cover the shading, which is kind of like the fun part. So, although I love making characters like this, for anybody who's joined my personal streams, if you know, you know. So this guide that I'm using for my frame, I can use it now to create a background. So I'm going to switch my fill and stroke. And it's surprisingly, I think I drew this in the right order of operations, so it's in front of behind my character. But if for some reason it's in front of your character or parts of it are obscured, you can go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back to send that shape behind your character, so that everything is kind of in the correct order. Now you can see this is not a very good color for my character. It's very hard to see. So you want to make sure when you're doing this that everything has good contrast. So you're going to want to definitely be going into this tint slider. And for the background, I want something that's, again, going to be light enough that my dark outfit stands out against, but dark enough that my lighter vampire's features stand out. So I think that's looking pretty good so far. Now let's get into the shading on this, which is going to be, it's going to go pretty fast, but it's going to get a little bit more technical because we're using masks. And I know that that's kind of a pain point for some folks. So if you have trouble with masks in the past, we've got other Adobe live streams, other pro tips, other challenges that go over all of the technicalities of using masks. We're gonna cover them as like a tool for a texture, but we're not gonna go super in depth. So feel free to check those out. Also, we have a live chat. I'm gonna make sure I see Clever is on it with the jokes in the live chat. A couple folks joining us on YouTube. Nice to see you over there as well. You can leave comments on the replay on YouTube also, so feel free to say hi. And throw your favorite, like I said, throw your favorite monster or creature suggestions in the chat. They don't have to be spooky. Maybe you like, you know, fairies or sweet creatures instead of spooky ones, but we are doing Halloween, so like I said, the rest is gonna go pretty fast. And if you have any trouble, you might want to, you know, you can always watch the replay and go through this again. So I'm gonna open up the transparency panel just because I know we're gonna use that. If you don't see the panels that I'm working with, you're gonna want to go to your window, and all the panels are actually in the window, and any of the ones that are checked are currently active or open. So if you don't see one of the panels I'm working with, just go here and make sure that it's open. Peter saying Wolfman. I consider doing a Wolfman for this. A really great way to add, not that this is going to be a Wolfman, but a great way to add texture is to just use the pen tool like so to add some like furry texture to your character, which is a lot of fun. Okay, getting distracted. We're gonna add some texture to this. So I'm gonna go over to my gradient panel first. And starting with this, because this is kind of gonna have a lot of depth where the cape kind of opens, I'm gonna do a Command or Control C to copy and a Command or Control F to paste in front. You can also access all of these copy and paste in front commands from the edit menu. And then we're gonna apply a gradient to this. So clicking on the gradient over here, it's just gonna apply a simple black to white gradient. That's what we need to use. If for some reason you're not getting that, you can get to that white to black gradient from the gradient panel over here. But we need this to be vertical instead of horizontal. So with the gradient tool, you can see when I click on it, it's gonna show you the direction of the gradient. I'm gonna drag from the bottom up. And when I do that, when I click on the bottom, it's gonna set my gradient in a new starting point. And as I drag, it's gonna set the end point wherever I release. So you can drag up to have it kind of end at the top. So the starting point is now at the bottom where I initially clicked, and the end point is where I drag to and release. And this is what you wanna see. You wanna have your black at the top and white at the bottom. And that's because when we go to do the next step, or the final step, our texture is gonna be where this white area is. Well, it's actually going to be across the whole thing, but the top here, the black, is actually going to disappear. So all you're going to be, or no, the opposite. Sorry, my bad. The area at the bottom is going to disappear. The white's going to disappear, and the black is going to. No, I still mess it up. The lighter color, which is going to be what we're putting the mask over, is going to remain, and the darker color is going to disappear at the top. That was my bad. Anyways, if we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna apply an effect to this now. So I'm gonna go to Effects, I'm gonna go to Texture, and I'm gonna choose Grain. Now you can play around with these settings in here. You're gonna get a lot of options in this panel with different textures. It actually pulls up all the texture effects, but we're gonna be using Grain today. And I'm gonna go ahead and change this. I think by default, it's gonna set it to maybe regular. You see regular's got a lot of colors mixed in. I only want black and white, but you feel free to play around with some of these other ones to kind of get an idea of what they look like. The nice thing about stipple is that it gives you like a pure black to white. It's also very high contrast and very large, like the shapes of these are very large. And then adjusting the intensity is gonna give you more or less grain, and then adjusting the contrast is gonna change kind of the transition to be sharper or wider, I guess, softer. My advice, have a little bit that's 100% black and a little bit that's 100% white, and so that you can see the transition, but you'll also see, you know, too much grain, you're not gonna see the color behind it. So we're gonna hit OK. And now in my layers panel, I find it easiest to do this in the layers panel. I want to select the shape on top, and I want to shift and click on this circle to select the shape below. Sometimes if you just shift and click, you'll notice I'm not getting that filled circle. That means I don't have the actual object selected. So I want to make sure I have the object selected. And then in transparency, I'm going to hit make mask. And now I've made a mask that's essentially going to show that texture with that grain. So I'm using the texture as a mask to kind of have that shown. All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to show you how you can go ahead and add you can keep adding shading to this. I'm going to show you how you can add your frame. So I've selected a frame, and then at the top of my layer, I'm going to hit Command F to paste it in front. I'm going to line it up so my character is kind of in the middle. I need to bring this up a little bit so it's visible. And then I'm going to drag out a circle, starting from the center, out, holding down Shift and Alt to keep it constrained, and then just dragging up. I just want this to cover my frame, essentially. Drag it beneath my frame, select everything on the layer, deselect my frame, and go to Make Clipping Masks. Now I've masked my character inside of the frame. So we're using two masks here. We've got the mask for the texture, and we've got the mask for our character. Now if I move this off, you can see it's not 100% perfect, but as long as the character is contained within the frame, you should be okay. All right, so like I said, feel free to keep going. Once you're done and you're satisfied with this, you can share it to our Illustrator Discord and the DCC feedback channel to get feedback from everybody and check out everybody's work. And yeah, unfortunately, I think we're like already out of time. So much to talk about today. As always, thank you for working with me today on this Illustrator illustration challenge. We went over creating a character using basic shapes, adding texture using gradients, and the grain effect with an opacity mask, and then use clipping masks to frame our art. We're live once a week on Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific time at behance.net/Adobe Live and on the Adobe Live YouTube channel. And we've got more live content, more challenges coming up after me. Bye, everyone.